Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into a collection of sources that really challenge some long-held assumptions about ancient wisdom. We're looking at excerpts from a text called The Scientific and Logical Foundations of the Vedas, and our mission here is to pull out the most surprising, the most profound insights. So get ready to maybe reconsider what you thought you knew.
It's really compelling, actually. These sources portray the Vedas as much more than just religious texts. They suggest they're a kind of wellspring of scientific and logical thought, even compared to modern understanding, which, that's quite a claim.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that claim right away. It's pretty bold. The sources state, and this is quite direct, nothing is contrary to science and logic in the Vedas, and that they contain deep understanding of, physical science, not just spiritual stuff. So what are some of the specifics that really jump out?
Well, building on that and thinking about, the context, many ancient texts believed in a flat Earth, right? But these sources say the Vedas describe the Earth revolving around the sun, and it gets even more specific, really remarkably specific.
How so?
Descriptions of electricity generated by rotating a metal wire between magnetic poles. And this is pretty critical, that gravitational and electrical forces follow the inverse square law. Even planetary orbits are described as elliptical.
Elliptical orbits and the inverse square law. That's wow for texts of that age.
Exactly. And also the concept of binary logic potentially leading to advanced automatic calculation. It really makes you ask, doesn't it? How could these concepts be present so early on?
It really does. It kind of shifts your perspective on the history of science.
And it suggests a theoretical foundation that's, much older than we typically think. It's not just theory either. The sources mention practical applications, things like medical science in Ayurveda, military science in Dhanurveda. These are considered Upavedas, sort of ancillary texts applying the core knowledge.
Right, the practical side. So not purely mystical. And the point about the Vedas not being afraid of science, even encouraging blasphemy against prevailing trends, that's quite striking.
It is. It suggests a very empirical and rational approach. It's not about just accepting things blindly. It seems to be about inquiry, about testing things, even if that goes against, the common beliefs of the time.
So, okay, if there's all this knowledge packed in there, how do we actually access it? It sounds like it's not just a case of reading a translation. Our sources mention they're written in Vedic Sanskrit, not the classical Sanskrit most people might encounter. And getting that language right is crucial.
Absolutely crucial, and particularly the pronunciation. That's fact 13 in the source. The idea is that correct pronunciation was key to preserving the Vedas exactly as they were created. Think about it, like even in English, saying a word with a different tone can flip the meaning entirely,
Sure,
right?
yeah. Tone changes everything.
So this means each mantra can hold multiple meanings, almost infinite layers, and nailing the pronunciation is like finding the key to unlock those deeper insights.
Okay, pronunciation is key. But then, here's something really interesting. The sources are emphatic that rote memorization is useless, a waste of time. They call the Vedas a workbook. It needs practice, action, contemplation. Not shortcuts, but like deep immersion, like learning an instrument or a sport, maybe?
Exactly. It's not passive. And there's a strong warning against just memorizing lines to seem knowledgeable. Apparently that builds a false ego and actually blocks real understanding later on.
So it demands more than just intellect. What about the state of mind needed?
Right. Fact 15 points to a yogic approach being essential. And that means more than just, the physical practice. It's about achieving peace of mind, mastering the senses, the thoughts, because the concepts are apparently very subtle.
Subtle how?
Well, the sources say an agitated mind, or one caught up in trivial things and worldly pleasures, just can't grasp them. They use an analogy like trying to teach Einstein's relativity to an uneducated drunkard.
Okay, I get it. It's futile without the right mental state, the right discipline.
Precisely. It requires a really focused, disciplined, analytical mindset.
And it sounds like you're not just fed the answers either. The sources say the Vedas do not go into details which humans can find themselves. That seems different.
Very different. The idea is they provide thought processes. They encourage discovery, exploration. They give you seeds, not trees. Clues, maybe, enough directions so you don't go completely off track, but they absolutely demand your effort, your engagement.
It's like a mental workout. They call it the best brain tonic for humankind.
Yeah, because it stimulates that critical thought, that active seeking. And this applies everywhere, physical sciences, social, mental.
Which leads to this really powerful point, the blend of truth plus logic plus faith. The claim is The Vedas are unique in insisting these three walk together. Unlike other traditions that might ask for, unquestioning belief, how does that actually work?
Well, what's fascinating is the strong stance against superstition or fatalism. That's fact 17. They actively encourage scientific thinking, free will. Results come from effort, not just fate. The message is reject anything that's just a claim if it doesn't hold up to logic.
So faith isn't blind acceptance here. It's more like conviction built on reason.
Exactly. It seems to arise from understanding and maybe even personal experience, not just being told what to believe.
And then, maybe the most surprising thing for many people, the sources state the Vedas contain no miracles or stories. No historical figures to just blindly follow either. Purely science, best practices, spiritual knowledge. That feels very distinct.
It really does, almost like a scientific framework rather than what many expect from ancient scriptures. Being prehistoric texts, as the source puts it, is seen as a benefit here, allowing this focus.
So if not blind faith, not stories, then what is the basis?
Fact 19 clarifies they do not demand belief in the unseen or unsubstantiated. Instead, it's based on the premise, the idea that the ultimate source of knowledge is actually within each person.
Within us. How do you access that then?
Through practice and willpower, through effort, contemplation, good deeds, and the acquisition of knowledge. It's an internal journey, a process of discovering what's already there, not receiving something totally external.
Okay, so this unique foundation, what does it mean for all the other Vedic literature we often hear about? The sources say the Vedas are the base for texts like the Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Darshan, the Upanishads texts, known for being incredibly insightful.
Right. And here, Fact 20 makes a really crucial distinction between Shruti and Smriti. Shruti refers only to the Veda Samhitas themselves, the core knowledge, action, worship. And interestingly, only one Upanishad, the Isha Upanishad, because it's chapter 40 of the Yajurveda, is actually considered Shruti.
Only the Veda Samhitas are Shruti, plus that one Upanishad chapter. So Smriti is basically everything else. The epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, the other Upanishads, the Gita itself.
Precisely. That's all Smriti. And here's the really critical point the sources make, with huge implications. Almost all Smriti texts have been adulterated.
Adulterated, meaning changed or corrupted over time.
That seems to be the implication. Therefore, the instruction is, if you find inconsistencies, disputes, contradictions in those Smriti texts, the Veda Samhitas, the Shruti, are the final ultimate reference point, the unadulterated source.
Wow. That really changes how you might approach those very famous, very influential texts, doesn't it? It suggests a need for real discernment, constantly checking back against that foundation.
It certainly prioritizes the Veda Samhitas as the bedrock.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given us, and hopefully you, a really fresh perspective on the Vedas, not just ancient scriptures, but potentially profound sources of scientific thought, logical reasoning, and this really unique active way of gaining knowledge. We've seen this emphasis on critical thinking, exploring for yourself, having that disciplined mind, rather than just accepting things or memorizing.
Yeah, this look at the Vedas really does force a reconsideration of what ancient wisdom can be. It highlights a path to knowledge that seems deeply rooted in inquiry, in personal effort, and that internal search.
So as you think about all this, here's something to maybe mull over. In our current age, with information overload everywhere, where maybe shortcuts are glorified and we want quick answers, what deeper insights might we be missing out on? What might we gain by embracing something like this Vedic emphasis on, deep immersion, critical thought, and that potentially profound pursuit of knowledge within ourselves?